Whenever the topic of weak characters is discussed, there are always three unfortunate candidates brought to the table: the Priestess, Elemental Envoy, and the Officer. Three characters that are aimed to benefit a specific playstyle, but fail due to a few shortcomings in their kit. There may be more or less characters added to that list based on the person's experience, playstyle, or bias, but in general, these three are the most consistent at the bottom. However, when it comes to the weakest of all three, the uncontested, most agreed upon, beaten to death choice is the Elemental Envoy. It's not even close, seriously, this guy sucks. That being said, the Elemental Envoy is a part of a much bigger and more interesting discussion alongside his legendary sibling, so I'll be talking about them in another video. For now, let's discuss the second weakest character into the game, the Officer, why he had potential, why it fails, and what can be done to help him out. The Officer is an offense character with decent stats all around: 6 health, 6 armor, and 200 energy. He won't be tanking Firefly bullets anytime soon, but he won't go down from one shot either. Before we talk about his gameplay, I do gotta mention his design. It rules except for the helmet part. I feel like this somewhat kills the vibe of the cowboy for me. I know he wasn't meant to be playable, so making him a reskinned knight makes sense, but maybe he should have gotten an overhaul when he was made playable. I don't know. Anyways, let's talk about how to unlock him. You can unlock the Officer through the Veteran Hunter achievement, requiring you to finish 10 tasks from the board, which you unlock after reaching 2-3 and having the safe unlocked. In my previous video, somebody pointed out that unlocking the Officer is somewhat of a passive achievement. You can just unlock him by playing a bunch. And while I partially agree with that, the inconsistency of it is really what makes unlocking him take way more effort than the character is worth. You'll get a bunch of easy tasks at the beginning or be smacked across the face with some of the worst and most tedious tasks to get. It doesn't help that the worlds you arrive at are RNG as well. Maybe you could get it passively, but if you're actively trying to get the Officer, pray to God you get good rolls, or else you'll experience a fraction of the pain free-to-play Soulknight players go through in order to upgrade their knight a single level. Oh well, I guess it's better than paying 12,000 gems for another level character, right, Priestess? Moving on, let's talk about his passive. Now, I haven't played the Officer in ages, so when I was brainstorming for this video, I assumed, oh, the Officer definitely has the accuracy and crit chance buff. It makes sense with his starter weapon, his beam, his skills, and the range that his kit encourages. Apparently, I remembered wrong, however, because the Officer has the increased combo number of combo-based wait, what? What does the Officer have that buff? His starter isn't a combo weapon. None of his skills benefit too much from the combo buff, and most combo weapons are situational at best and impossible to find at worst. Passive buffs are chosen to assist the character in some capacity. Elf and Assassin, for example, have their passive buffs complement their starter weapon. Vampire and Paladin passive buffs support their overall playstyle, and characters like the Knight and Necromancer buffs help them deal with a major weakness the character has. But the Officer's buff does really nothing for the character. Combo-based weapons deal enough damage as is for what they are. Increasing the combo number at best increases the time to kill by a second, and at worst puts your life at a greater risk for a longer time. It doesn't help that, once again, nothing in the Officer's base kit benefits from said buff. Objection! I'd like to bring your attention that so far, we already found 2 glaring problems with the Officer and we haven't even gotten into his skills, which should define the character. Well, hold on tight because this list is gonna get a lot longer. Let's talk about the Officer's skills. Oh, right, his starter. Yeah, his starter, yeah, it's a gun. Yeah, it's a gun, it's a pistol type gun. It's about what you expect. The Officer's first ability, Gunspin, has him pull out his Devotee of Peace and load up a bullet. The ability has multiple charges, and the more you use it, the more bullets you load into your gun, up to 6. Firing causes the Officer to fire all 6 rounds at once with moderate spread. It's worth noting that without the combo buff, the ability only has 2 charges, and the Devotee of Peace can only hold 5 bullets, making it the only ability in the game aside from the Demon Mancer's entire kit to require 10,700 gems instead of 5,700 to reach its full potential. Now, this ability is rad as hell visually, but it's littered with problems. The first and by far the biggest one is, you stop shooting in order to load it. When people hear the word DPS, they notice the D a lot more than they notice the S. They'll take that out of context. If you want the full burst, you have to wait for 3 additional seconds after loading the first 3 in order to get it. That is almost 4 seconds of no shooting for 6 bullets that deal 8 damage. The 48 damage burst may seem like a lot, but you have to account for the time you spend not shooting. With most weapons, especially with buffs and attachments, you can output a lot higher DPS than that. Sure, you can somehow mitigate that by only firing the first 3 bullets, but that's now a 24 damage burst, literally the damage to some mid-tier bows, and that's your entire skill. Speaking of mid-tier goals, that brings us to our second problem, lack of skill. One of the reasons the Berserker and the Knight, in my opinion, are some of the best characters in the game is due to their skill. The better gear you get, the more effective their abilities become, scaling your power to fit the current floor. This is, however, not the case for the Officer. You get the same 8 damage bullets on every floor, regardless of difficulty or any attachments you have. You only have 2 methods of improving the skill, the accuracy buff, which affects everything, and the mentor buff, which increases the bullet's critical strike to 20 and makes them piercing shots. But the mentor is a rare NPC, very much unguaranteed. Besides, NPC and statue buffs are entirely RNG, making them unviable to discuss when it comes to character's power, unlike passive buffs where you have an option and occur somewhat consistently, in my opinion. A third but minor problem is that when you need to swap from the difficulty of beast or melee weapon, for example, to remove enemy bullets, you lose all your charges, and getting stunned while holding out to bullets also gets rid of them. Additionally, the statue buffs work when you first step the skill, so if it's something like the Berserker statue, you lose a lot of its time to get this minor burst. All these problems for a 48 damage burst with a spread and low crit chance. Meanwhile, if you took the Elf, Engineer, or really any offense character, you'd get much more consistent scaling results for a damage ability. It sure doesn't help that this ability is one of the only ones that actually cost energy. Even the Knight gets the ability to double melee if he runs out of energy. The Officer gets nothing. The most optimal way I found using this skill is finding a bullet between sniper-like weapons to squeeze in extra damage during downtime. This has 2 problems though. The first is that this method chews through your energy like crazy, and it's achievable with a secondary weapon anyway, although it is nice to be given the freedom to have a melee second. And the second problem is that you notice you shoot while spamming the skill, which is the same playstyle of the rogue. You, however, don't get them with stability frames. And most importantly, can you imagine role-playing as a rogue player? I'd rather be French. So in conclusion, yeah, this ability is a let. It's cool that Soulknight has their version of Fennegar Revolver though. While Gunspin focused on the gunslinging part of Cowboys, Bounty Tag focuses on their deadeye accuracy. The Officer tags an enemy, putting a mark on them for 10 seconds. While it's active, any bullets you fire will track the target and bend through the air, attempting to home onto it. Additionally, you get increased crit chance when attacking that target. When the target dies, the mark turns into a coin, which is the bounty that you claimed. The ability has an extremely short cooldown of 2 seconds. Now, if you have played Soulknight before, you probably already could tell the problem with this ability. Soulknight already has auto-aim. Weapons that can potentially miss have a very high projectile speed to compensate. Weapons that can miss by having a low projectile speed compensate by firing so many bullets a second that the enemy monsters at the once tasting bullet health. Positioning and kiting the monster are also skills well learned as they play the game, so to a skilled player this does next to nothing. The increased crit chance is great, don't get me wrong. In fact, this ability is considered one of the best for boss rush. But remember that it's very inconsistent. Crit chance is a questionable mechanic as is, and the damage values differ for all weapons, making it scaled, sure, but not in the consistent way that other skills can do. The crit chance is also only for the Officer, meaning in co-op where an ability like this can shine, it doesn't. Take into account also how wonky aiming this thing is. It's hard to explain how awkward it is to try and tag the enemy you want, but Soulknight's auto-aim combined with its ability's weird LOS mechanic, and it's a nightmare to tag monsters you actually want to kill. This isn't an issue with bosses until they start spawning minions, of course. So, have fun killing any of the World 2 bosses. Although it is funny how hard this ability owns the volcanic sandworm, it's beautiful. This ability sorta tries to encourage you to use shotguns, but the thing is, the shotgun's widespread ends up working in their favor, hitting enemies beyond the intended targets and providing bullet health. This skill does turn shotguns into snipers, but at that point just use snipers then? The lower energy cost wouldn't mean much considering how easy it is to recover energy in Soulknight, so again, it's good, but it's outshined. And just like before, if the ability misses, you still activate your statue effect, which depending on your position can harm you as well. However, while using the skill in lore mode for footage, I found this really weird synergy it has with the staffs. Staff weapons generally try to spread out their bullets all around you to hit as many enemies as you can in a 360-degree radius. Fun, but not effective. With the skill, you can turn staffs into snipers, and when you consider their elemental abilities, you can already imagine the implication. Try it out, it could be fun for you as well. It still has the whole just use a sniper problem, but hey, it's more fancy. Now, Soulknight found a way to incorporate gunslinging and accurate shooting to the officers as skills. What will they do with his third skill? What's an iconic stable of all cowboys that would be interesting to see on the Officer, and would make sense with some previously established mechanics and give him new utility and playstyle as well as some bonus strat points? A best friend he could rely on and ride like the wind with the situation at hand's call for, perhaps? What did they give him? That's right, an AC-130, of course.
Destroying the sniper tower would provide no strategic advantage.
Close air support is by far the most random skill you can give to the cowboy, but it's also creative, so it gets points for that. The Officer uses a walkie-talkie, causing an airplane to fly in and drop firebombs in a straight line towards the nearest target. After so many flaws with the last 2 skills, you'd think this one would be a good ability. And well, the ability is... okay. Yeah, it's okay. It's a room clearer, just worse room clearer than every other ability. Yeah, it's just fine, it's a straight line of damage. It drops elemental pools, so now you're playing shitty alchemist. Yeah, sure, it's just... yeah, it's fine, I guess. It's weird, because as cool visually as this ability is, every time I use it I always think, man, why am I not playing the alchemist right now? Poison does deal more damage than fire damage, surprisingly, especially since the alchemist has the poison buff as a passive. In addition to the slow, it's just more damage overall and shorter cooldown. While Evol's air support is fine, it does have its own problems too, namely that the explosion can knock enemies away from the fire pulse, which doesn't really help its already low DPS, although cutting enemies will help with that. Additionally, this is just a me thing, but aiming this thing is pretty awkward. It vaguely aims towards where you're looking and the nearest enemy, and sorta uses both of these metrics as a way to drop the bombs, making it miss more often than not. Once again, the inconsistency problem persists within the ops. So, that's it? Inconsistent mediocre skills and a buff that makes no sense make him the worst character in the game? Seriously? Well, yes. Once again, all the characters have buffs that assist their kit directly as well as at least a couple of decent skills. Unlike the officer that has a terrible skill, a situationally okay skill, and an alright at best skill. Perhaps a bigger contributor to why he's bad is the lack of air defense. Most Soulknight characters have a defensive utility integrated somewhere into their kit even if they don't have a defensive skill. The Alchemist poisons apply slow so he can out enemies. The Airbender gets a Kai aura around him to protect him during his deadly lasers since he is stationary. Hell, even the Knight and the Necromancers, characters with no defensive abilities, have their passives to reduce the damage overall. The Officer has nothing, making survivability a challenge. You could say he's a feast or famine character, but with all the problems he has, the reduction in survivability makes him a mildly inconvenience or get thoroughly and professionally fucked character. So with all that being said, can the Officer be redeemable? Well, yes, actually, the bases are all there, we just need to improve. First off, in Gunspin, I think it would be better if you were allowed to fire while loading up the Devotee of Peace. Make it have an alternative button for firing the Devotee altogether. That way, you're still maintaining your regular TPS while loading a huge burst of damage from when you need it the most. Sure, it will look weird having two buttons, one to load and one to fire, but Gunspin isn't really your regular Soulknight ability anyways, so I think it wouldn't be too bad. Secondly, Bounty Tag's fix is actually already in the game. The Mentor buff makes it apply a 25% damage vulnerability to the target affected, which will make it one of, if not the best ability in the game, especially for co-op. It would be overpowered in boss rush though, so maybe make it 20% for all monsters and only 5 or 10% against bosses. And finally, perhaps consider reworking close air support's aiming and aerial effect. I think the airplane should fire more bombs in generally contested areas instead of just a straight line, and perhaps consider making the bombs destroy bullets as they land on. That way the officer gets some sort of a defensive tool. And finally, given the accuracy buff he was always meant to have, and you got yourself a gunslinging, bounty marking, 11 kill city, cod laying cowboy, the officer was always meant to be. So in conclusion, is the officer bad? Well, yes, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy myself by collecting footage with this video. The officer is just cool as hell, man. Despite his glaring flaws, at the end of the day, I was still playing Soulknight, just with a difficulty tweak and an encouragement to get out of my invincibility frames comfortably, which in my opinion speaks for how good Soulknight is, that a character can be this bad and still enjoyable to play at the hardest difficulties. Don't let this video or anyone's opinion stop you from enjoying the officer if you do. It's fun, and even the paladin can suck if he doesn't fit one's playstyle. Soulknight characters are just as good as their pilot is, and who knows, maybe you are the Wild West Sheriff among us that can make this extremely flawed character the most broken gunslinger in all of Soulknight. Thanks for watching, and thanks for all the support you guys gave me on my first video. I was extremely worried about how well it would be received, and it was heartwarming seeing all the support. Thanks a million for all the constructive criticism too. Nothing goes unnoticed and unconsidered, and it all helps me improve my videos for all of you. Consider subscribing so you don't miss out on my next video, and drop a like if you want to see more of this style of content. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time.